Hey, and welcome on in to Patrick Party Pregame here from Auburn, Alabama. This chilly Saturday morning. Last Saturday, it got cold. That Ole Miss show, we finally wore a jacket. Then it got hot. That Mississippi State game, I was just wearing a regular polo. Now we're back with the vest, and it's starting to feel like some November football. So flattered you would join us. For those that might not know me, I'm Patrick Bingham, and welcome on into Patrick Party Pregame. We are going to go through the Saturday slate, and then, of course, in a more extensive preview, talk about this Auburn Vanderbilt matchup. Should be a lot of fun. I'll actually be at the game up in Nashville. Thought about doing a show live from Nashville. Logistically, I just didn't think it would work. So, to be candid, this is pre-recorded. But happy for you to be joined with us here on this Saturday morning, and excited to get into the show. As you should have received Friday afternoon, early-ish afternoon, is our email newsletter, along with our podcast. Within that newsletter, it has everything you could want for the whole week. That's our preview titled Momentum, Auburn and Vanderbilt. We've had a word for each one of our stories. Momentum is this week's word or phrase. We have our podcasts coming out, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and PatrickParty.com. Under that, we have our Pick'em. We had our best participation ever from the Patrick Party Pick'em last week. You still have time to do that, so you can go to our email newsletter, click on that link, or you can go to PatrickParty.com, find the Pick'em page. You can make your picks up until 11 o'clock Central Standard God's time. That is when games kick off, and that is when the Pick'em closes. So don't forget to do the Pick'em. And on top of that, we have our national TV board for those of you that will not be joining myself in Nashville this Saturday. Get your board, print it out, look at it on an iPad or something. You can see all the games. There's a really great slate of games this week and the next couple weeks, so I highly encourage you to do that as well. And with that, we're going to start our show how we always like to start our show, commemorating the 1983, 93, and 2013 football teams. So we start with 1983. Auburn, number 4 Auburn, plays number 5 Florida at home in Jordan-Hare Stadium. They won 28-21. This is a quicker show today, so we're going to be going through these a little bit faster than normal. 1993, number 9 Auburn, Arkansas. Auburn gets the win 31-21. Remember, 93 they had just beaten Florida. They get up to number 9 in the polls. They go on the road to Fayetteville, where this current Auburn team in 2023 will play next week, and they get the win 31-21. And following that big win in College Station that we showcased last week, now from 21 or 24, somewhere in the 20s, Auburn rises to number 11 in the country, starting to realize what they might have the potential to do in this 2013 season. They beat Florida Atlantic at home 45-10. They played Western Carolina at A&M, then Florida Atlantic before they kind of get into their final stretch before the November to remember in 2013. And with that, let's go ahead and get into our Saturday slate for today's games. We start with the game at Darrell K. Texas Memorial Stadium. We've done a Patrick Party from there before. That's number 23 Kansas State, number 7 Texas. If a team from Red River is going to be playing in this Big 12 championship game, it is the defending Big 12 champions, the Kansas State Wildcats. Kansas State has looked awfully good the last couple of games. Their ground game has led the way as it checks in at number 3. Checks in at number 5 in the country with 226 total rushing yards per game over the last 2 seasons. Kansas State has held 14 of their 15 Big 12 opponents under its season scoring average. They're a team, they want to play physical, they want to play hard, and they want to dominate you. Kansas State in the last 9 quarters has outscored their opponents 89-3, only giving up 3 points in the last few quarters. Texas, on the other hand, has won 6 straight against Kansas State. They were the Wildcats alone, one of their few losses last season. The Longhorns' 7-1 record is their best start in program history since 2009. A win would give Texas a 5-1 start in conference play, which would be their best since 2013. Texas, you want to talk about the kind of matchup in this game? We just talked about Kansas State's defense. Only giving up 3 points in the last 9 quarters. Well, Texas has scored 30 points or more in each of their first 8 games of the season for the first time in program history. This should be a really fun matchup. In the 4 times previous that these two teams have played, both ranked in the AP poll. A lot of these game notes come out before Tuesday, which is when I ironically actually had made some stuff and then had to go back and change it because the rankings changed because the college football playoff poll is now out. But the times they've been ranked, at least in the AP poll, because that's been going on forever, they played 4 times. They have both split 2-2, and in the 4 games, 2 have been in Texas, 2 have been in Kansas, and they've split those 1-1. So it should be a really fun game. This is any kind of way to win the game for Texas, like a prove it, like you're that good, big time statement, especially after Oklahoma slipped up last week. This could be a statement game for Texas. We talk about the other game in not in Texas actually. It is in Oxford. That is Ole Miss, and Texas A&M Ole Miss is actually ranked 10th. 11 a.m. in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. A&M has claimed 3 of their last 5 matchups against the Rebels. But the last time this one was in, I don't know. Last year when they played in Kyle Field, Ole Miss was able to play spoiler, and A&M struggled that season. A&M is Led the Power 5 with 75 tackles for loss and 33 sacks this season. Their defense has not allowed an opponent to get over 100 yards through the air and on the ground, so 100 yards in both in a single game. They have not given that up. They're going to have a fun test against the Rebels today. Ole Miss is off to a 7-1 start for the second straight season, the first time in back-to-back years since the 1961-62 seasons, and they've cracked the top 10 for the third straight season since 62, 63, and 64. Ole Miss is 19-2 in their last 21 home games at Vaught Hemingway, as well as 19-5 overall at home with Lane Kiffin at the helm. And, we really talk about this Ole Miss offense, and I think, we see Lane Kiffin, we see Ole Miss, and we're like, oh, surely their defense is bad. But the Rebel defense has held 3 straight SEC opponents to fewer than 300 yards of total offense for the first time since 2008-2009. And, that was over 2 seasons. And it's the first time within the same season since 1993. So shout out to that Land Shark defense. Let's go ahead and, it could be a big statement win for Dabo if possible, but I'll go ahead and make so we're not going to have picks at the end of the show either. We'll make our picks from inside First Bank Stadium in Nashville. But we'll be picking the 2:30 and up games for time slots. So we're going to pick all of our 11 o'clock games here on pregame kind of as we go through them. I pick Texas over Kansas State. I pick Ole Miss over A&M. Next up, Notre Dame, Clemson. Well, Dabo's had a fun week. Tyler from Spartanburg had something to say. And, everyone's talking about Dabo and kind of hating on this fan. But if you listen to what the fan said, the preamble of what this fan said, it pretty much he really danced around and had this, whole interlude to pretty much get to the point of saying, why do we pay you this much money to be bad and be 500? And that is true. Clemson's lost back-to-back games for the first time in a long time. They're not going to win today at home against Notre Dame. Notre Dame has really turned it on after that loss to, they had a really tough stretch, big game after big game after big game. They finally slipped up to Louisville, who then slipped up to Pittsburgh. Or maybe they didn't. I don't know. This is going to be an interesting one. Dabo Swinney is still trying to he is tied, but trying to surpass Frank Howard for most career wins at Clemson. Clemson's also attempting to improve to 20-9 under Dabo Swinney in rematches with opponents whom he lost to in their most recent meeting. Clemson getting the win the last time these two teams played. Notre Dame got that win. Notre Dame's red zone defense has improved 127 spots in the national rankings from 129 to now the second-ranked red zone defense in the country. This is the 8th time the two programs will meet. Clemson holds that record 4-3. And, the Irish are 2-1 in these regular season affairs, but Clemson has won the big ones, the 2018 College Football Playoff semifinal and the 2020 ACC championship game. I like the Fighting Irish up in old Clemson. Another 11 a.m. game, Arkansas and Florida losing this game. At least head coaching-wise isn't going to be looking too hot. Guys, you got to pick Florida in this one. I know they looked bad against Georgia, but they've had a pulse this season. Arkansas fired their offensive coordinator over the bye week. They're struggling. Their defense is really, really good in this one. Ben Hill Griffin Stadium is actually a place Arkansas has never won, that and Faurot Field. Up in Columbia, Missouri. Through 8 games, Arkansas ranks 5th in the SEC and 31st nationally in total defense. Arkansas's defense has allowed 22.9 points per game this year. And KJ Jefferson, he's been all right. He's thrown for 14 touchdowns so far. He's also rushed for 200 yards and a touchdown through 8 games this season. And, of course, he's been playing there for several years, so he has several records. But the Gators have been good at home. They've just struggled on the road. They've been 10-2. They have a 10-2 series edge over the Razorbacks, and are undefeated in their 5 meetings at home. We just talked about that. Those 5 matchups they've won by an average of about 23 points, and they've won 13 of their last 15 in the Swamp, against everyone. So should be a fun one. But I gotta like the Gators in that one. Let's talk about maybe the SEC East. Don't want to discount Tennessee, but maybe the SEC East semifinal, or the East championship game, the semifinal for the SEC from the East side. That's the Missouri Tigers in Georgia. I know this looks like a fun one, but guys, Missouri is good. And I think they could hold into this game. You got to feel like this is a pull-away game for Georgia. I mean, all of my things for Georgia talk about just how many times they've won recently. And, last year's game was close. It was a 26-22 win for the Dogs up in Columbia. Missouri did not look that good. It was after Auburn had flirted around with Missouri and found a way to win that game, I guess. This is the third straight year Georgia's been ranked number 1. That Missouri's played them. We just said that same stat last week about Florida. Missouri leads the nation in red zone offense and have lost 6 straight games scoring at least 30 points. Their offense is good. This is going to be a good test. We know Georgia struggled to run the ball at times. They ran all over Vanderbilt the other week, and Florida too. And I think this could be a good game for a while, but I think we all know where we're going to find this. They say anything can happen in Bedlam, and I think if that's true for any year, it's this one. Number 9, Oklahoma at Oklahoma State. That's in Boone Pickens at 2:30 on ABC. It's going to be a fun one. It's the last time, these two teams played 3 times before Oklahoma was even a state. And it's one of the longest consecutive running rivalries in the sport. And it will be no more when Oklahoma comes to the SEC next season. Players to watch in this one, Ollie Gordon has been electric for Oklahoma State. He didn't really play those first 3 non-conference games, but after that, he's had literally Heisman caliber type season. He leads rushing stats despite not playing in those games. He leads the FBS in every major rushing statistic. The only FBS player in the past 10 years with 250 scrimmage yards in 3 straight games. His 282 rushing yards at West Virginia are the most for any FBS player in a game this season. 5 straight 100-yard rushing games and 2 straight 200 rushing yard games. And we talked about Oklahoma State. They did not look in a good place after they lost to South Alabama, but they've won 4 straight Big 12 games. They're now 6-2 and tied for first in the Big 12 with a 4-1 record. Oklahoma State could play spoiler, and after we were on that Oklahoma train, it could be back-to-back losses for the Sooners. And this is the final scheduled Bedlam contest. And after this Oklahoma State conversation that we've been having about you said when Texas and Oklahoma would leave the Big 12, you would take over, and then they lost to South Alabama, we were like, oh, maybe not. But they've looked awfully good as of late. Ollie Gordon, the second, has been big for that. Dylan Gabriel's going to have a big game. And, Oklahoma's defense, which has been so strong, especially with, they finally looked like a Brett Venables defense. They looked like an Oklahoma defense, for what we think of last Saturday in Lawrence. We'll see what they do on the road. It's got to be a great atmosphere in Boone Pickens. So the final Bedlam. We talked about James Madison and Georgia State. James Madison, remember, is not eligible for the Sun Belt or postseason contention this season. They will be next year. They weren't because there's a rule where when you transition up to FBS, you aren't eligible the first 2 years. That doesn't really hurt most teams because they're not good enough to make a bowl game. James Madison has been the last 2 years and probably win this league. But that's just how it goes. This will be James Madison's first ever trip to Atlanta. The Dukes are just one of 8 undefeated squads left with 8-0 records, along with Air Force and Liberty. The Dukes are 3 unbeatens left in the non-Power 5 conference. Of course, Tulane has also been getting a lot of love. Their lone loss is to Ole Miss at home. It was pretty close for a while. The Dukes are first in rushing defense, yards per carry allowed, and sacks, and tackles for loss. Georgia State, on the other hand, it's only their 14th season of football, 10th at the FBS level, and they're trying to get to a 6th, eligible for its 6th bowl game and 5th in 7 seasons under Sean Elliott. We were talking about if Sean Elliott would get it going. And look, Georgia State was playing really well. They got blown out, by Georgia Southern on the road this past week. It's a big bounce-back game for them. Their quarterback, Darren Granger, averages 279 yards of total offense. He's completing 67%, which is second in the Big 12, the Sun Belt for his passes. This should be a good game. Won't make this pick later, so I like James Madison this one. Our only other Sun Belt game this week, Georgia Southern, who beat Georgia State. And you should remember, you should know their coach. even if you're not really paying attention. That is Clay Helton, formerly of USC. We'll talk about USC and some records in a second involving Clay Helton. They play Texas State, who lost Detroit. Two teams kind of in that second tier in the Sun Belt. Big game. We've been following Texas State. I know TJ Finley is there. This is a big one for both teams. I like Southern in this one. Let's talk about Washington and USC. It's just hard to take USC seriously when their defense is so bad and Washington's offense is so good. But this is still a big game in the Coliseum. And we talked about it. It's on the graphic. Through 23 games, Lincoln Riley is 18-5 at USC. Clay Helton was 18-5 at USC. Caleb Williams, defending Heisman winner, probably out of it. The other guy, Michael Penix Jr., will probably win the Heisman. The Huskies are off to an 8-0 start for the sixth time in school history. Have won 15 straight dating back to last year. They lead the nation in passing offense and are number 5 in total offense. Through 8 games, Penix is number 1 in the FBS in passing yards and passing yards per game. They're going to throw it around, and I think against this USC defense that, again, it's hard to take seriously. I just wonder, the only way USC keeps this close is if it's just a shootout. And, it's a who gets the ball last, and maybe that's Caleb Williams. And, for all the talk about USC, he is the defending Heisman winner. He is that good. He will get drafted very high in the NFL draft, if not number 1 overall. Alabama and LSU. Last time as Western Division foes. We'll see how often they play, when the new scheduling and everything comes out. This is a game where if it's low scoring, I got to favor Alabama. If it's high scoring, I got to favor LSU. To be totally candid, I think LSU's the better team. Alabama's defense is far better. LSU's offense is far better. I just think the firepower that LSU has on offense is probably what gives them the advantage in this one. But it's in Bryant-Denny, and it's hard to pick against Alabama there. I think this game comes down to Jalen Milroe and what he's able to do. And this one is if he's able to run free and hit a couple deep balls, probably picking the Tide. Again, I think LSU is the better team. And I've gone back and forth on this one. We'll make this pick later in Nashville. I think that's the key to the game. Nick Saban is 21-2 when facing a team after he's lost to them 2 times. LSU in 2010 and 11, and Ole Miss in 2014 and 15 with Freeze as their coach. Again, This is as hard as it is to pick a game. It's in Bryant-Denny, and that has to matter for something, right? Oregon State and Colorado. Colorado just continues to fall short. They're looking a little bit more like – it's one of those things where they were winning and they were doing better than people thought. But you had to recognize that they struggle with the lines of scrimmage, and it is still very much a rebuilding process. As the team that went 1-11 last year, it's still a great accomplishment of what they've been able to do. Oregon State, we were finally giving them some love and saying, they could sneak on into something if they wanted to, if they could beat some teams. Then they went out and lost to Arizona, which we said, and this is how it could get derailed, was if they did this. They did that. I think they'll have a bounce-back win in Folsom Field. Colorado getting so much national attention. It's the most literally in program history they've ever been on national TV. The Deion effect is very much real, and I'm interested to see how they continue to build moving forward. One more Pac-12 After Dark game. That's UCLA and Arizona. Arizona, they might sneak up and beat you. This could be a fun one. UCLA has a lot still in front of them. I think they're really good. If I'm picking an upset for this week, it's probably going to be this. I wouldn't call the LSU-Alabama game an upset at all. That's 50-50. If you had to pick one, man, oh man, I'll take it. I'll take Arizona in this one. And then the game up in Nashville, which will be later today. We'll make our picks from Nashville. It's Auburn and Vanderbilt. At First Bank Stadium in front of about 28,000 fans. It'll be the smallest crowd Auburn's seen since playing TCU in the 80s. And just to kind of break this one down, we did it on our podcast. You can follow that as well. Let's talk about Vanderbilt for a little bit, and then we'll kind of transition over to Auburn for those Commodores. They got 2 quarterbacks. They kind of said they'll play both of them. Ken Seals has been their starter. He was a starter the COVID year. He's just really struggled. Walter Taylor looks like Cam Newton. Did I get that right? Yes. He is 6'7", 235, and got his first career rushing touchdown at Ole Miss. Ken Seals can read a defense, from what I've heard. Walter Taylor, not so much. Even the running back had to step in against Ole Miss and help him out on this one. It's just one of those things when you look at the Commodores where on the offensive side, it's like, how are they going to score points to keep up in this game? If this game's low scoring, advantage Vanderbilt, I guess it could get weird, but you just struggle to think how this offense is going to be able to score points. They're still just trying to find themselves on this offensive end. Their best player is Will Shepherd. It's senior day, so you would imagine he'll be playing. Vanderbilt's schedule's weird. They also have the construction. It's their final game at home for the season. Will Shepherd's had 8 receiving touchdowns, is 10th in FBS and 3rd in the SEC. Shepherd is 1 touchdown away from matching his 2022 season total. No Commodore in history has caught 9 or more receiving touchdowns in a single season twice in a career. He'll get drafted. He's probably their best player. The doors on defense, a lot like Mississippi State in the secondary. The problem is they don't even have State's front. I think Auburn's going to be able to run and throw and do what they want on them if Auburn can come out and have the discipline, as Free said in his Monday press conference, to just take care of business in this one. And Free said, look, it's scary. Auburn has lost the last 2 times they played there in 2008 and 2012. And this Vanderbilt defense, for its flaws, we've talked so much about the turnovers this season. Auburn's defense has been great in that. The offense hadn't had that many. Vanderbilt's defense has had 10 interceptions this season, which is tied for Auburn most in the SEC in interceptions, 13 in FBS. Vanderbilt's 13 turnovers overall gained is second most in the SEC behind Auburn's. And a game that could get weird in front of very few people. Watch the turnovers in this one. And it wouldn't be an Auburn-Vanderbilt game if we didn't shout out Vanderbilt's punter. But 2 great punters in this one. We've talked about Oscar Chapman a lot this season. Matthew Hayball leads the SEC and is second nationally in punting with 49.4-yard average. He has had 1,730 punting yards this season. Yikes for Vanderbilt's offense. On 35 punts with a long of 71 yards and has 13 kicks inside the 20. Could Vanderbilt pen Auburn deep? Maybe. I just think when you look at Auburn on this, Auburn, they finally got things going, and that's kind of what our whole preview is about, is can they use this positive momentum and keep it going against Vanderbilt, take care of business, get to a 5th win. With the game against New Mexico State, you feel like that pretty much clinches the bowl. They got a big game on the road at Arkansas. And this Auburn offense, they've made it work. Thorne's 3 touchdown passes against Mississippi State were the most by an Auburn quarterback in an SEC game since Bo Nix versus LSU in 2020. His 76.9 completion percentage was the best since Nix played at Arkansas in 2021. That was the win for Auburn. Jarquez Hunter led the ground game against Mississippi State with 144 yards on 17 carries, which complements Auburn's SEC rushing offense, which has averaged 186 yards per game, which is 4th in the league. And the offensive line got some shout-out. Senior tackle Gunnar Britton was named SEC Co-Offensive Line of the Week, and center Connor Liu was the SEC Freshman of the Week. Played every snap as center in his first career start after the Avery Jones injury. Talk about this Tiger defense. We've talked about that red zone defense, and I just think it's one of those things where they gave up some big plays against Mississippi State, and Mississippi State was able to get chunk plays. But it's one of those things for Auburn where depending on what quarterback comes in, kind of depends on how you're going to play this team. I just think I think turnovers are going to be a big thing in this one. They have a streak of 18. They forced a turnover in 17 straight games. The current streak is 18. The most recent streak, which it dates back to 2007-2008 season. We'll see if Auburn can do that again. Other than this one, the matchup heavily favors Auburn. It's just one of those things where can Auburn be mentally strong enough and take advantage and get this win? And prior to 2008, of course, Auburn and Vanderbilt played in 2016. Auburn won. In 2012 and 2008, the last 2 times Auburn's played in Nashville, it was Auburn's objectively 2 worst teams of the century so far. And since then, Auburn had won 13 straight contests against the Commodores. The all-time series is actually tied at 21 games apiece, and I believe 4 ties. A big chance for Auburn to gain momentum, just over this all-time series. but more importantly in this season, get a win, consecutive SEC wins for the first time in quite a minute. And, a chance for Auburn to get some momentum going. They have a big game against Arkansas, and we've talked about, can they get to 7-5? That would be a massive improvement on this season. They were able to take care of business against Mississippi State. Can they do it again against Vanderbilt and then Arkansas, which would set up a pretty entertaining Iron Bowl in Jordan-Hare Stadium? So not too much to talk about. I know one of our shorter shows, but just wanted to get on here and kind of just go through our games in an abbreviated Patrick Party pregame. Again, we're going to go ahead and get into Bingham's bets actually first, and let's go ahead and get into it. Ohio State plays Rutgers, who is 6-2. Again, Rutgers' back half was loaded. They probably won't win again. Ohio State an 18.5-point favorite. I like the number 1 Buckeyes in that one in the spread. Ole Miss, Texas A&M. Ole Miss a 3-point favorite at home. I like the Rebels in that one. Let's continue on. Tennessee a 35.5-point favorite over Connecticut. UConn, who's 1-7 at home in Neyland. I'll take the Vols in that one. 35-point favorite, I think they'll cover in that one. Florida, a 3.5-point favorite at home to Arkansas. I think the Gators will for sure cover in that one. Virginia is a 3-point favorite at home. That's kind of your home extra points in that one. I like Georgia Tech, though, to cover in that. Georgia, 15.5-point favorite over Missouri. I'll take the Dogs to cover that one. Sorry, those of you that want an upset. Man, oh, man. Let's see. Man, Iowa, Northwestern. Let's look at what this over-under could be in this game. Blindly, before I see it, I'm taking the under. It is set at... Oh, it's not on here. That's kind of odd. Oh, there it is. 30.5. I'll take the under for Iowa Northwestern at Wrigley Field. James Madison, a 5.5-point favorite over Georgia State. I'll take the Dukes. Pretty big in that one. Auburn, a 12.5-point favorite. Vanderbilt has only covered one game this season. I like Auburn to cover in that one. Reveals that pick. Not that had to be too shocking. And Alabama, 3-point favorite at home. I don't know. If Alabama wins, I think they cover. And obviously, if LSU wins, they or lose by 2 or 1 points, then they did too. I don't know. That's a pick 'em. UCLA, a 2.5-point favorite at home. I'm going to take Arizona outright to upset. Should be a fun one, and that'll pretty much do it for the show. Shorter than normal, not going to lie, but thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning. Again, our newsletter is out. You can subscribe to that for free on patrickparty.com. We'll make our picks from Nashville. That'll be posted out on all of our social media platforms around 2-ish, maybe the 1:45 range. And it should be a fun game in Nashville. We'll be back next week. Same time, same place. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy your college football Saturday.